There we go. There's one of our classics.
Welcome to the bonus.
Welcome to the bonus. Yeah.
This was published in 1948 by C.S. Lewis, called On Living in an Atomic Age. In one way, we think a great deal too much of the atomic bomb. How are we to live in an atomic age? I am tempted to reply, why, as you would have lived in the 16th century when the plague visited London almost every year. Or as you would have lived in a Viking age when raiders from Scandinavia might land and cut your throat at night. Or indeed as you were already living in an age of cancer, an age of syphilis, an age of paralysis, an age of air raids, an age of railway accidents, an age of motor accidents. In other words, do not let us begin by exaggerating the novelty of our situation. Believe me, dear sir or madam, you and all whom you love were already sentenced to death before the atomic bomb was invented. It is perfectly ridiculous to go about whimpering and drawing long faces because the scientists have added one more chance of painful and premature death to a world which already bristled with such chances and in which death itself was not a chance at all, but a certainty. If we are all going to be destroyed by an atomic bomb, let that bomb when it comes find us doing sensible and human things, praying, working, teaching, reading, listening to music, bathing the children, playing tennis, chatting to our friends over a pint and a game of darts. Not huddled together like frightened sheep and thinking about bombs. They may break our bodies, a microbe can do that, but they need not dominate our minds. What the atomic bomb has really done is to remind us forcibly of the sort of world we are living in which, during the prosperous period before, we were beginning to forget. And this reminder is, so far as it goes, a good thing. We have been waked from a petty dream. We've been waked from a pretty dream, and now we can begin to talk about realities. It is our business to live by our own law, not by fears, to follow in private or in public life the law of love and temperance even when they seem to be suicidal, and not the law of competition and grab, even when they seem to be necessary to our own survival. For it is part of our spiritual law never to put survival first, not even the survival of our species. We must resolutely train ourselves to feel that the survival of man on this earth, much more of our own nation or culture or class, is not worth having unless it can be had by honorable and merciful means. Nothing is more likely to destroy a species or a nation than a determination to survive at all costs. Those who care for something else more than civilization are the only people by whom civilization is at all likely to be preserved. Those who want heaven must have served earth best. Those who love man less than God do most for man. Let the bomb find you doing well.
Dude, I liked C.S. Lewis before. What a badass.
Yeah.
What?
That's powerful, man.
Dude, and he was a man of some sort of like religious notion also, man.
Yeah.
Like, but how, man.
Let the bomb find you doing well.
See, this is a like, oh god. This is like, we've talked about this a bunch. Like everything right now, what freaks me out the most is the elimination of individual free will. Mm-hmm. Right? Because then we're like, what is the man? You can't play with, like, you can't go bowling with bumpers and say you're bowling, you know? Man, oh, you talk about this some, because like I'm just like because like, dude, what is freedom? Freedom is the ability to choose what you do and how you do it, right? And we're not in a very free society then.
No. Yeah,
or are we? Because this is the other problem of like restraints. Because we can draw comparisons with this, like the nuclear scare to a COVID scare or an economic scare,
right.
All these ideas, right? But the other reality is that these are very real threats against us, right? And we don't.
But I don't think the point is that it's not a real threat.
Then what's the point?
I don't think he's saying we don't have to worry about the atomic bomb because it isn't a real threat. I think what he's saying is that spending your time worrying about the atomic bomb is in and of itself going to make sort of going to plunge our lives into hell. And the idea of that I feel like the most interesting point was in the middle, where he was talking about only the people whose goals are not to serve society as a whole are the ones who are of any use to society. So the people who spend all of their time trying to save society and save everybody are the very people who are going to be destroying society.
Is that a conservative
And those
notion?
who don't get into or what does he say? Something about the only ones who will get into heaven are the ones who served the needs of man or something like that.
Dude, so like I'm not as like the idea of being fearful of the nuclear bomb. Like I remember my mom talking about being a kid and like oh, get under your desk and cover your head, right? And now we look at it like, dude, this is absurd, right? And then like we were just talking like, oh, make sure you're protected, right? It's like, right? The cost from like this era are not just like the like this cost, right? Or it's having a different societal impact of this like notion that we can control fate also to some degree.
Yep.
Isn't it? We're like manufacturing a reality.
Yep. And we don't. Here's something that I thought about on a run just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I think that people are so upset if you don't believe in the mask thing or the vaccine thing is it's just like what you're saying. We're crafting this reality. We're doing this play. We're playing out that what we're doing is really important to save everybody, even though everybody knows it's bullshit because people are taking down their masks and eating. If it was life and death, you wouldn't do that. If it was life and death, you wouldn't go to the restaurant and take your mask off when you sit down and put it back on when you stand up. That's nonsense. We all know that's nonsense.
It's a joke.
But if you call people on it, they get very upset, and I think they also know it's a joke. But they can't handle the fact that they're doing a play. It has to be real. And so what they need is they need everybody else to confirm it too. Because if somebody doesn't, it confirms their own doubts and their own holes that they've poked in it. And so it destabilizes the whole thing. And so it's very important that everybody sits in there with them.
That's where I was saying, like, I'm seeing, to me, it seems like I'm seeing correlations with the thought process of the narrative that I'm seeing from like the CNN versus Fox, whatever it is, right? The whatever, the CDC is putting out, right? Like the way that information is being given, right? It reminds me, I think we talked about this, it reminds me very much of my upbringing in an evangelical Protestant church, right? Of like, this is our doctrine, right? Yep. And anything that's outside of this doctrine is dangerous to think about, is dangerous to ask, right? Like these are like, no, here's the knowledge and this is what you need. And if you have doubts or questions, like don't leave this path because that will like, once you go off, like then nothing's going to make sense, right? It's, dude, I don't know what's going on, man. I don't know what's going on. The nuclear bomb. I'm more scared at this point in my life, Anthony, of getting cancer. Like that seems like a more legitimate fear of that being what like messes my life up and takes me off this planet.
Right.
That's much more my concern than COVID is.
Right.
Right.
But you're also not going to let that, you're not going to sit around in your house hiding from cancer, worrying all day.
No, well, I do and I don't. Because like, to me, it feels like, oh, what age am I? Okay. Well, both my granddad and my mom had this, had cancers, right? Like, oh, so like, statistically.
So what do you do about it?
So, well, that's where like, so now, like there were a few years. I noticed this once I got married. My whole thought of like life and death changed a lot because I never had a person that I was in love with, a significant other, a person that I was like, had that level of commitment to, right? It's a different commitment to me. Like family bonds are different than like a marital bond, right? So like that was actually, it's something that I think I'm still coping with to a degree, is realizing like, oh, we've entered into this like exclusive forever contract, right? That will be broken, not of our own decision, right? But of our own existence. When it ceases, then that contract is done. And there's not more time to like redo it or try again. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like it's weird. So like I'm fearful of that. I'm fearful of the idea of like just getting sick and like, oh, well, guess what, dude? Yeah, your run's going to be up in about, we'll give you like 6 months to 3 years, but it depends on how it goes. We'll see. Maybe you'll get 4.
I think being fearful is different than being crippled. I've
totally been crippled by it at times.
By the fear of cancer?
Oh yeah. Well, not necessarily just the fear of cancer. It's knowing that like in the essay we were listening to, right? Like Okay, so you don't want it to be the nuke? Okay, have it be the plague. Oh, you don't want it to be the plague? Okay, well now we have all these STDs, right? What like pick your poison, right? Oh, it's a famine. Oh, it's an invading army. Right.
But I think he's saying you can't let yourself be crippled by that.
You shouldn't. It's not a rational. It's not the most rational. It's not the most edifying for the individual to be obsessed with those factors as opposed to enjoying life in other ways, right? But I also think like that's a personal place to come to. Like I bet you if we had Mr. Lewis here, right, he would probably like cop to at some point and be like, oh yeah, man, like I was totally stressed about this, right? Like how could you live through the world wars and not think like this is like the end of humanity?
Right, of course. But he was still writing books. He was still raising kids. It was still a whole thing.
Maybe he was ahead of the curve. Or I feel like two people that I want to say like, I mean, I don't know what category he would be in, but he seems like a person that you could call an intellect. It seems like people like to read the words that he wrote. Yeah. So maybe he like connected some dots. Maybe he connected them quicker and is like, oh, all this has happened. I mean, that's where I was like, you know, if we talk about how it seems that society's values might be shifting, or especially to some conservative people, right? Like the people that I grew up with, hanging out around all the time, right? The people I still associate with, like the idea of like transgender rights, they get really, really touchy on it, man. And it's like, this is an abomination, right? And I'm like, not really, man. Like, I see what you're saying, but also like that person should be free to manifest themselves how they want. And it's more this like this like desire to control and to like you're saying, it's like I need you to confirm my values so that I don't have doubt in my perspective. And that's like the whole thing of like people going off of clicks.
But it's also it's so weak. Like the weakness in it is absurd because you are requiring other people to tell you what you want to hear. I mean, it's like extremely mentally unhealthy.
But that's
like that. Your strength needs to come from within you.
That takes a lot of legwork, man. That's
no, of course it's hard, and we all fall into it. But it's if you're in a bad spot if it's not just bothering you, and you are actually requiring other people to do it. But
it's like the idea too, like that like if we didn't have any laws. Right? It doesn't mean that our society would necessarily not exist. But if we didn't have laws and we didn't have ways to enforce these laws, it would require such a high degree of personal attention and responsibility and accountability. Like, dude, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, it would.
That's where I wonder, like, maybe this is the best we can do. You think it is? Like, do you think we're at like...
I don't know. I don't know what the best we can do, and I don't like formulations like that because I think they stifle creativity by definition. The best we can do. I think we don't know what the best we can do is.
But it's also like, isn't it just as bad to be like, oh, we need to be a better society, we need to progress, we need to change laws, this and that, right?
Well, that's dumb unless you're being specific. But here's the thing. So like people argue.
Well, but it's only specific to each group, is what I'm saying. Like. Each group could have a different idea of like what progress would be,
and they should pursue it.
But then if we have laws, there's going to be someone that wins and someone that loses. That's the reality. That's what a law does. It restricts.
Right. Well, that's the problem with laws. Yeah.
It restricts like options. Laws, breaking the law.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting clip. It was kind of powerful.
It is interesting. And that guy wrote the Chronicles of Narnia, man. That like, dude, I want to live in that world so
with Mr. Tumnus.
So
and the
bad.
beavers.
Dude, come on, man. You know what I'm saying? And the beavers, they're like, we cannot speak here. Even the trees are listening. Dude, it's so crazy. Like, oh man, it's such a great
Turkish delight.
Series. Dude, that's good stuff. Rose petal, Turkish delight. Oh my gosh.
I like it too.
You had it? It's so good. It's great. Dude, the English. Well, who's the other guy he hung out with? Lewis, the other author.
Tolkien.
Tolkien.
Yeah.
Dude, we went to I could go in the other room and ask Liz, but we went to a pub where they would hang out, right?
That's fun.
And it was like, oh, this is like the same building. I think it was outside of Oxford. Does that sound right? That sounds right. And
Yeah, probably.
because we were like walking around, like there's certain parts of the campus, and it's like this old like city, man. And, dude, it was so cool. And then we went there and had a pint. Super cool, man. Like really old wood. It was
That's
very
great.
everything there was old, man.
Nice.
Who knows? Maybe they redid all in the 70s and they just like took a sander and okay, like stain it a little bit. Okay, cool. It's good. It looks
Probably.
older. Maybe. I don't know.
There we go. Kill the magic right there. Well, I think that's the bonus. I think we did it.
There you go.